Wonderful. Well, good morning, Jill and Sunny, and thank you so much for joining us today and being with us to share some of your experience with us. Just to give a little bit of background, BFSS is funding one of ChildHope's projects in Uganda called the Happy Maths Club. I absolutely love that name. Jill, I wonder, could you start us off, please, by telling us just a little bit about ChildHope and what you do?
Yeah. ChildHope has been around since 1989, and we currently work in Africa and Asia mainly. Our main focus is with highly marginalised children and young people. So they are children living and working in extremely hazardous conditions, at high risk. For example, children living and working on the streets or on dump sites or at risk of trafficking. So very, very marginalised children who can get missed by other programmes, big programmes, etc. We have a very child-centred approach, so we try and focus on the child first and then support the child and the layers of support around the child to ensure that the child is safer and more included in our programmes. And we also have a partnership approach, so we don't have any programme offices in the countries we work in, but we work very, very closely with locally led partner organisations.
Brilliant, thank you very much. One of the things that really stood out for us when we received your application in the first place was the level of really genuine involvement and participation of young people, both in your project design, but also at a structural and organisational level. So I was wondering, Sunny, could you talk a little bit about how young people are involved in the strategic vision or direction at organisation level?
Thank you very much, Ashley, once again for the opportunity to kind of share our thoughts and our experiences in terms of, children participation in our project. Now, basically, as Jill mentioned earlier, we don't have project offices, in the countries we work. And this is an area that we've had a bit of conversation around in terms of the governance level and shape in these countries. However, because we actually work with partners, as Jill earlier said, our kind of approach is such that we tailor every work we do towards the agenda of our partners. And so because we don't work directly in these countries, we tend to maintain that low profile and ensure that the way our partners kind of direct their work, it's the same manner in which we sort of kind of operate. So in other words, the strength of our approach lies with the way our partners essentially engage with the communities, with the children, and all other key stakeholders that we work with. Essentially, we take that approach because we feel that the energy and focus of children, especially in terms of participation, is much more likely to be gained if they engage with partners in the countries that they work with, and they have access to them, they understand their ways of life and their realities. And so essentially our kind of approach then is kind of, like I said, built around our partners. Now, in saying that, we ensure that we work with our partners to maximize the way that we work with children, the way that they work with children, to ensure that the highest level of participation is kind of built into, their thinking, their planning, and the implementation of work, and the way they monitor that work as well. So just very quickly, we want to ensure that the way the children work as well actually speaks to their realities and their strength and the kind of support they get around, not just the families, but communities as well. So in such a manner, the kind of the way we do our work speaks to the strength, the quality of the partners, but the children as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's great. And so that's at your larger, more organisational level. When it comes to your specific projects, I know that children are very closely involved in the design and also the management and ongoing work of the projects. Jill, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as you just pointed out, Ashley, we try and work in a very tailored way because our partners are actually very different to one another. So we listen to, you know, as Sunny said earlier, the agenda of the partner and the way that the program, what they're thinking about doing when they develop their program, and we tailor the participation of children and young people to the same kind of way. But what we do try and maximise is the involvement of children and young people as early as possible in the design of the project, and then to continue that participation in different ways throughout the project. So to give an example, I can give the example of the Happy Maths Hub as an example. In the early days of the Happy Maths Hub, there was some interviews with children and young people, and also with other people in the community and teachers and families, etc. But children were definitely a strong focus, talking about the areas of disability inclusion, of menstrual hygiene and health, and also around their motivation for maths was something that came out very strongly. And that was one of the areas that came out so strongly that they wanted to really do some work around motivating particularly girls to want to do maths and to continue to be enthusiastic about maths as part of their education. So there were interviews, one-to-one interviews, but then also the children were engaged in developing the theory of change for the project. So they were actually developing the design of the project in the early days and throughout, and they'll also be participating in monitoring and evaluating and telling us how the project is going. One of the really important things that the partner and ChildHope identified was this issue of motivation around maths. So we thought that it was really important that the children participated in the recruitment of the maths facilitator. So they became part of the recruitment process, and the people coming for the interview had to do a lesson with the children. And after that, the children fed back about how they felt about their interactions with that person, and the lesson was also observed by some of the adults in the team. So the children's views around who to choose were included in the decision-making process, which was great. And going forward, the children will be involved in campaigns, developing messages, as I said, feeding back about how the project is going. So we've got different moments where they're going to participate in the process at different levels.
I love that approach so much. And it's so important, isn't it? Because these are the people the children, the young people who are going to be interacting on a daily basis with the people who are going to be implementing the work, and having them involved in something like the actual recruitment of staff gives them real power and a real voice in the decisions that are then going to affect their lives. And it's actually, in some ways, it seems like quite a simple thing to do, doesn't it? But there's a lot of power in that approach. So obviously involving children and young people in so many aspects of projects and in your thinking as an organisation, there must be a lot of challenges that come about when you do that, but also presumably quite a few opportunities too. I was wondering if you could speak briefly about what you think the main challenges and opportunities of doing this are.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for that very important question. Because, I mean, to begin with, the fact that, for example, in the Happy Math, project, the children were involved, from the outset, in terms of a focus group discussion, setting out, for example, their thoughts in terms of how they want the project to kind of be implemented. It meant to begin with, the whole process then becomes very relevant, okay? So when you actually listen to children and hear what they have to say about such projects and activities, it becomes very relevant. And when it is relevant, then the chances of success becomes even much higher. That is something that is very key when you actually get children involved in the process. The thing at times is that as adults, we may have the best will in the world, the best interest of the child, and we might actually think about what they need and what they don't need, and so set out to do things, that at times with the best intention might not be probably the most appropriate approach or the immediate, priority that children do have. However, when you actually get children to be part of the process and you listen to them, then you get to understand that even though you've got all these amazing ideas and thoughts that you think are the best for the children, you then later find out, if you engage them, that actually what is most pressing and important to them might be different from actually what you're thinking. And hence, that then enables you, the adults, to actually work together to ensure that whatever it is that you do does not only look at the problems and challenges, but equally, you're able to then work together with children to find solutions to this problem. And so the chances of success and change and improvement becomes huge in terms of ensuring that children participate in the process. So, but even beyond that, beyond engaging children in projects and activities, you find that when children are participating in activities, and that respect, that process gives them that clear understanding that actually my views and opinion are being valued, all right? So that is the kind of, if you like, qualities that they then take through lives in terms of the fact that they become confident, they know that their contribution actually matter. And to that extent, how that, even helps them develop all through their life to adulthood is just incredible. So the benefits are quite huge. Mm-hmm. Now, very quickly, we know as well that change, looking at the challenges now, yeah, that at times habits, old habits are embedded and don't change easily. And ChildHope, as Jill said earlier, we tend to work with marginalized children and children that are street connected. And so at times we work within that context where children are meant to be kind of seen, not heard, right? So they don't have the opportunity to voice their opinion or stress their wishes in activities that affect them. So because of that, we always tend to be very careful and say that the way we approach change and participation has to be such that, does not cause stress to the child, to the family or community. So we tend to encourage a kind of gentle and incremental approach, which, on the one hand, if you like, challenges the notion in such setting that actually children's opinion maybe does not that matter, but equally we do it in a way that the key stakeholders, including families and communities, actually see for themselves the incredible change or impact that happens when they listen to children, either within projects or other activities. And so it's just very important to ensure that we do these things in a way that we don't rush them and we don't create too much, stress and at times, problems. But fundamentally, one of the things that we always ensure is that for every event or activity that children will participate in, it's critical that you do some clear risk assessment and you understand, what risks and what you need to do to manage those risks. So that's very critical. So as they kind of participate and help to change, things, they actually do it in a safe way.
Yeah, and that's vital, isn't it? Absolutely vital. That has been really helpful, Sunny. Thank you. And really important to stop and think about the wider community impact that has, and doing so in a sensitive way as well, because it sounds like something which is really lovely to do and that perhaps we all might want to get involved in, but actually there are going to be a lot of other external factors that you need to take into account, aren't there? And that's a really helpful piece of practical advice going forwards with that. Thank you. Jill, going forwards, and kind of wrapping up this session, what advice would you give to an organisation that was looking to increase the way that children can really meaningfully participate in the decisions that affect their lives and in the projects that they are going to be involved in?
I'd say, just reflecting back on some of the points that Sunny made there, one thing that's really important is to take it slowly and not to try and kind of dive in there and do every initiative possible without really thinking about what the situation is like. So really to take it slowly, to perhaps look at some of the theory behind children's participation. There's some good sort of theory you can read up around, which is really useful in setting the scene for yourself as a practitioner who wants to include children more thoroughly. And then also draw on the resources that are available. There are a lot of good resources around children's participation available, and mostly they're free to download. ChildHope has a toolkit available for free on our website, and I think SAVE and UNICEF, different organisations, have lots of resources that people can draw on. And there's lots of creative ways as well. I think, it's not just about talking. You don't have to depend on them writing. There are games you can play. You can use art and drama, etc., and songs and things, depending on the age and the level of literacy. So to get creative, to make it fun, and yeah, just going back to take it slowly, to plan it carefully. Make sure you do think about the risks and how to overcome them before you start. So really, it's just to take a kind of measured, planned approach in the process. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Sunny, to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just some, you've touched on the key points, but as well, I wanted to say that at the end of the day, you have to talk to the children and know that they are happy and confident, to be part of whatever initiative you want to undertake. That is very important, because once again, at times, as adults, we might just take it for granted that, okay, we want to fulfill the UNCRC, Article 12 for participation. So let's just get children and plunge them into all these activities. Now, at times that could be very noble and in terms of thoughts and ideas, because you actually want children to participate. But have you actually spoken to the children? Have you touched on the kind of activities that will involve and whether they are comfortable? Because at times, if you're not careful, even the process of participation becomes very stressful to children. Yeah. So we have to be sure that we talk to them as well as we try to kind of work with them to see how we can, one, come up with ideas and projects and thoughts that will help, shape their lives and give them, that opportunities to kind of, achieve their goals and dreams.
Amazing. That is such helpful advice and so important to remember, because in trying to deconstruct this top-down approach, actually, by enforcing child participation on young people, in some ways that could just be reinforcing it, but through a different approach if it's not done in the right way. So I think that is so valuable to be reminded of that. Jill and Sunny, this has been such a helpful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We are going to be moving on in a minute into a time of Q&A with the rest of the participants at this grants workshop. So, and I know that you're going to be around to help answer any questions that people might have, but this has been really great in terms of framing that discussion, giving lots of great theory, but also practical responses as well to that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us, Ashley. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Wonderful. Thank you.